Hello, and welcome to Forward Thinking, a podcast from Learning Forward Texas. I'm Debbie Tanton, Director of Business Operations, and I'm excited to be your host. Before we jump in, I want to introduce two people who help make this podcast possible. Lisa Ham, our Director of Marketing, and Andrew Summers, our Webmaster. They're the producers behind the scenes who bring these conversations to life. Forward Thinking is designed for educators who lead and support professional learning in their schools and districts. Our goal is to share ideas, perspectives, and practical insights from educators across the field who are working to strengthen teaching and learning. In each episode, we'll talk with leaders and practitioners who are doing this work every day, sharing what's working, what they're learning, and what others can take away. We hope these conversations spark ideas you can bring back to your own teams and systems. Today's episode is the second in a three-part series focused on new teacher induction and support. Across Texas and really across the country, there's a growing recognition that how we support new teachers matters more than ever. Many districts are taking a closer look at their approach, moving beyond one-day orientations or a patchwork of supports that don't always connect. In our last episode, we started a conversation about what it means to design more intentional, coherent approaches to new teacher induction, one that helps educators build their practice and confidence over time, not just in their first few days. In this episode, we continue that conversation with Dr. Nicole Zwahr, President-elect of Learning Forward Texas. Together, we'll focus on a critical piece of the work, how we prepare and support mentors so they can effectively guide new teachers toward success. As part of this series, we're exploring what becomes possible when new teacher induction is treated as an essential part of a larger professional learning system, and what leaders can do to ensure that those systems truly support new teachers in meaningful, lasting ways. To begin that conversation, I'm joined today by Dr. Nicole Zwahr. Nicole, we're so glad you're joining us for this conversation. Before we dive in, I'd love for you to share a little about your background and the work you've done with new teachers and mentors.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm so happy to be here. I've been an educator for 28 years. I have taught mainly in elementary, fifth grade, and a little bit of third grade. I've done work in technology for a school district. I've also worked as an instructional coach. So I've had a lot of hands-on experience working with teachers and administrators to help build up the new teacher support.
Great. So thinking back to what first drew you to this work, what do new teachers most need that they're not always getting?
Oh, I believe that new teachers need to feel valued and supported. Teachers are human beings. And if I can just share a story for a brief moment, when I was teaching, I'd probably been teaching for about 7 years, I had a friend come to me and say, "Hey, I'm leaving the profession after the end of this year." And I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe that somebody would want to leave the profession after just 2 years. And so when I got my composure, I just inquired and said, "Hey, why are you leaving?" And she said, "Well, I don't feel supported." And I just couldn't understand that. I had wanted to be a teacher since fourth grade, so I couldn't understand why somebody would want to leave the profession. And it just blew my mind.
Mm.
So I'm kind of sad to say that after 28 years, I've continued to hear that same story from many other teachers in the profession. They just don't feel valued and supported. And I believe that our teachers come into a community that's already built, and it's hard for them to break into that community because everyone else has been there for a while or have formed connections, and our new teachers are just sitting out there all alone.
Yeah, and Nicole, I think we hear a lot about teachers feeling like they're on an island at times. They're closed in their classrooms with their students, and it's almost feel like they're alone in the leading that takes place in that classroom. And so we're going to get into in this episode, I know you've got some great ideas for how we can build those connections and how we can help them feel that support that they need. And so I'm excited to get into some practical ideas from you today. I know you've got some great expertise in this area, so we're thrilled that you're here today. So we're going to get more into this topic, but first we're going to take a quick moment to share a brief message from Learning Forward Texas. Before we get back to our guest, are you part of Learning Forward Texas? Membership is completely free, and it's one of the easiest ways to stay connected. Each week, you'll get updates on learning sessions, resources, and highlights from educators across the state. If you haven't joined yet, now is a great time. Sign up on our website, and let's get back to the episode. Welcome back. We're here with Nicole Zwahr. Nicole, when you think about mentors, what really makes that relationship meaningful for a new teacher?
I believe that most districts are trying really hard to provide support for their new teachers. Teachers receive support in curriculum, strategy support, behavioral support, communication support. But when do they actually get support for being a teacher, for being a person, for being a human? I think we are lacking in providing emotional support to our new teachers. So the thing I believe makes a relationship meaningful is just that. We need a relationship between our new teacher and their mentor, our new teacher and the other teachers on the campus, and even with the administrators on the campus. Our mentors need to be able to build connections with the new teachers. And this can be done through building trust and empathy between the new teacher and mentor. The mentor needs to have a listening ear and be available to the new teacher. I know I hear a lot of times, we just don't have time. We just don't have time. But as a mentor, we have to make time to be able to provide that emotional support for our new teacher. I also think that the mentor needs to understand that the new teacher doesn't know what they need, and they don't know what questions to ask, and they don't know why they're feeling this way, and they think that they're alone and no one else has ever experienced what they're going through. And so they're scared to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, or hey, that was hard. And so I think that the mentor needs to be able to understand that. They need to be able to provide examples of, hey, I don't know what you're feeling, but when I was new to teaching, this happened to me. Just to give that new teacher an opportunity to open up. I think we really have to build those relationships and those connections so that the new teacher feels heard and seen and supported on the campus.
100% agree with you. 100%. And I think mentors want to do that. Nobody signs up to be a new teacher mentor without wanting to really provide that support and help them and keep them in the profession. I think I think we as leaders have to be intentional in our training of mentors to make sure that we're giving them the resources they need to be able to do that. Because we know, and you've alluded to this as well, that a problem for mentors and what's difficult about mentoring is having the time to provide. So what can we do from your perspective as leaders of the professional learning for those mentors, if we have that ability to be able to do that and that pathway? What can we do to better support the mentors to be sure that they are able to provide that emotional support for new educators?
Yeah, I believe that it's really important for leaders to be able to provide that space and time and opportunity for the mentor and the new teacher to have time together. There has to be time set aside for training and activities where the new teacher and mentor are able to foster a relationship. Maybe there's trainings about trust and empathy and dialogue. These are all important skills that are needed by all of us, but we're never taught them. And so providing the space and time for new teachers and mentors to sit down together, learn a little bit about trust. Not only will this help between peers, new teachers and their colleagues, but also between the new teacher and the students in their classroom. It's very difficult to build trust and so easy to erode that trust. And oftentimes when we're going through the motions in our classroom, we don't understand why that happened. So building those skills around trust and empathy and just dialogue and how to have a conversation with the mentor or the students in their classroom, I think would be very beneficial. It also provides that opportunity for connection and community to be built. It is huge for new teachers to feel like they belong to that campus and that community, and setting aside that time and that space for them to be able to do that would be huge. I think it would just foster relationships amongst all of the teachers, and especially between the new teacher and their mentor.
Absolutely. I love what you said about helping them with this emotional support can also help them help their students. And I think as professional learning professionals, we sometimes forget that what we're modeling for the adults within our learning events should translate into the classroom and how they interact with students. Not that we treat adults like children, but that we use effective strategies that help them to demonstrate effective teaching strategies. And so we want to model what we want to see. And so I think when we're modeling those great strategies that help mentors support new teachers, those new teachers are taking that forward and using those same strategies as they build relationships with students. So I'm really glad that you pointed that out. I think we can be intentional about that. Nicole, you've talked about building relationships between mentors and new teachers and making time for them to be together. Are there some tools, some specific tools that you've used to foster connection during that time?
Yes, we use a book called How to Work with Almost Anyone by Michael Bungay Stainer. He has in this book what he calls a keystone conversation, and he lists out 5 questions that a new teacher and a mentor can have with one another in a discussion. And I actually like the first one, so I'll just share it with you guys. It's called an amplify question. And he's asking, what's your best? Like, when do you shine? What makes you happy? When are you in your flow? And I think that's a great conversation for a new teacher and a mentor to have, just to get a conversation started. It helps the new teacher be able to share how they shine and how they think positively of themselves. And then the mentor also gets to share. So that's a great question to start with. And actually, all 5 of his questions are phenomenal to help build that relationship.
Great. So we'll link that resource in the show notes so for our listeners if you'd like to see those questions. I love a good question. And I think that nothing really can build connection like a conversation. And with the right question, you can take a conversation anywhere. So thank you for sharing that example for us. I love too the idea of starting with something positive with mentor. I think so much of a mentor and mentee conversation can be about where they're drowning or where they're not feeling successful. And so to remind mentees, whether it's through a question or through something you've noticed, even what they're doing well and that they have strengths to build on can just be huge, not just for new teachers, but for all of us, right? And so I love starting a conversation with that and just appreciate your insight and your sharing that specific resource with us. And so in speaking of intentionality, for Learning Forward Texas members who may be at different stages of this induction work, we're going to have some that are just starting a new teacher development program or a mentor. Maybe they've had mentors, but they haven't had any professional learning for those mentors or been intentional about that yet. What are 2 or 3 practical takeaways would you recommend that they start on over the next year to strengthen or to refine their supportive beginning teacher mentors?
I would tell anyone who is either starting or has a program that's already going, work on building relationships. Set aside time that first year or this start of this next school year to build relationships. Really focus on how you can bring people together, how you can provide time for mentors and new teachers to meet, how you can provide during faculty meetings or other meetings on your campus that time for people to get to know one another, providing time on the campus for the colleagues and teachers to get to know one another, doing activities that foster that back and forth learning about their personal being. We are all humans, and so many times in teaching, we forget that we're actually a human being and a person first, and we jump right into teaching. So just, I think as a leader, a principal on a campus, or even at the district level, foster those activities, those times together where people can just get to know one another.
I love that. Often we're on a campus with 100, 200 plus adults, yet we feel alone, right? And so that connection has to be so intentional. And the leader of the campus and the leader of the district are the people that can make that happen. And so it's all about planning and intentionality. So thank you for pointing out some of these great characteristics of mentor support. And so, I mean, we just appreciate your time so much and your expertise. You're just an expert in this field. And so we're thankful, not just for your service on the board, but for your time today to share with our members about new teacher mentor support. So we appreciate you joining us for this episode of LFTX Forward Thinking. We appreciate you sharing your insight and your experience on supporting mentors as a critical part of new teacher success. For our listeners, if you'd like to continue this learning, you can hear more from both Nicole and Chris Summers, our guest from episode 1. They're going to co-facilitate a pre-conference session at the Learning Forward Texas annual conference this June. For additional details and registration information, please visit learningforwardtexas.org.